Greetings, greetings, greetings. Welcome, welcome. We're live. Now, today's topic is about cultural appropriation versus appreciation. This is one of those touchy topics, controversial. Could bring about sensitivities amongst people. But I think it's an interesting topic because there's a saying, people hate what they don't understand, right? Ignorance is not always bliss, because although sometimes ignorance can be blissful, ignorance can also bring about a whole bunch of negativity. And I see this all the time, especially nowadays with social media. You tend to see a lot of just like not so nice and just resentful type of energy, you know? It's like, because there's like a lot of just anonymous frequencies that come about. It's like when you have an individual, right? And that individual is there away from their peers, by themselves, you tend to get the real them. But then when they are amongst people they feel comfortable around, you know how they say strength in numbers? People are easily manipulated, persuaded. They tend to steer away from their actual true selves once they congregate amongst other people, which is unfortunate, because sometimes the true self of a person is, Runt, what's up? It's beautiful, you know, because it's real. And when you are, and that goes with social media too, when people hear a comment that's like funny, or it could be negative, but it might be funny in some sort of way to certain people, and then it's like they piggyback off of that. And then it's like, it breeds a whole bunch of like not so nice comments, you know? But it's like, would you do that if it was just you? So in this case, for the topic today, cultural appropriation is basically, I'll give you examples. It's like when there's something that is a part of whatever culture, right? And then it gets adopted, but like it gets watered down in a sense. So an example would be like Rastafarians, right? And Rastafarianism. So like, for whatever reason, if people say, oh, if white people, you know, start rocking dreadlocks, that's like frowned upon, right? For whatever reason, people be like, oh, you know, their hair is not meant for that, or what, or like white people wearing a do-rag, or like, but let's stick with the one I said, right? In this case, Rastafarianism. but I don't know. It's almost like reverse to me. It's almost like reverse racism in a sense, right? Where racism is racism regardless, right? Yeah, exactly. Dreads are not, you know, just meant for any, because if a black person, or let's just say an African American, rocks dreads, it's not frowned upon. It doesn't really make any sense to me anyways, right? Because like, why would you say that white people can't do that, right? Like dreads are just owned by blacks, right? Because if we're gonna open up that can, so you're gonna say that, like, a sport like basketball in the NBA is only owned by white folks because white people started it? And as far as the NBA is concerned, that doesn't make any sense neither, right? So cultural appropriation is like, it's almost like some sort of weird, like, gentrification philosophy, right? And the opposite is cultural appreciation, right? That's the opposite. And that's where I tend to, like, that's where I stay as far as my thoughts are concerned. Because if you look at, like, the thumbnail that will be on this live stream, it's going to be, and this is where I go with cultural appreciation, right? Here in the United States, and I'm sure around many, especially Western countries, you'll have people that love honey, right? No issues with honey, right? Whatsoever. Just like there's no issues with sugar, but there's problems with, like, cocaine and crack because it's, and heroin because it's illegal, right? But because sugar is legal and culturally accepted, then it's not an issue, but it's probably as problematic, if not more, right? Now, honey, if you think about it, right, and I'll spin it to, like, other cultures and then come right back to this culture and why it makes no sense to me. People will look at, like, Cambodians, Cantonese people, people of the Golden Triangle of, like, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, certain places, right, where they'll eat, like, insects, right? And it might be big in their culture, where they'll eat, like, whatever, tarantulas, whatever type of insect, water bugs, etc., etc., etc. And then people here in this culture, I'm in the US, are going to be like, oh, that's so gross, that's disgusting, etc., 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 right? But that's ignorance, because it's like, you don't, and honestly, even people that, and this might sound extreme, but even people that eat dogs and cats, right? It's frowned upon, especially here in the West, because it's like, we have domesticated these animals to the point of we have these emotional ties to them. But in other cultures, they may look at, like, animals, or like guinea pigs in South America, right? But here we are eating pigs, cows, chickens. In the South, they eat gators and possums and raccoons and, like, big marsh rodents, etc. Some of these things are accepted in different places, right? But we're quick over here, not me, but in general, the culture over here, we're quick to, like, judge people that eat insects as, and that's so gross, right? But over here, you eat honey and it's not a problem. And you'll see on the thumbnail, right? If you go to a lot of grocery stores out here, you'll see, like, raw honey, and it still has the combs, the honeycombs inside the jars, right? And if you really understand what honey is. It's literally bee vomit, right? These bees, they get the pollen from the flowers, right? And then they store it inside their stomachs, and then they regurgitate it out when they reach their hives. They literally vomit it out and let it dry inside these combs. And then when that is taken, like I said, in some of these jars, it's literally inside the jars. And women, men, it's so accepted over here where it's like, oh, yummy, I love honey, and I'll munch on the comb and everything. Meanwhile, it's bee vomit that has been regurgitated from the stomachs of bees from the wild, or if they're being kept. And that's not an issue. You see the double standard here? It makes no sense to me. So that's why there's this big disconnect where people are like, they're ignorant to, you know, in the examples I brought up where, oh, ew, disgusting, they're eating insects and they're eating bugs and spiders and whatever, and they fry it and they put whatever. No. But you're the same folks crapping on them, but you're over here eating bee vomit like it's not an issue whatsoever. Maybe you're just not even really thinking about it, you know? But that's pretty hypocritical in the way I look at it, you know? So cultural appropriation, the way I see it is like, shame on you, you know? Seriously. Like, it's like the person that says white people shouldn't be rapping and only black people should be rapping, or along the lines of any of that, you know? But meanwhile, it'd be like the white guy that's the biggest selling artist as a rapper, period. Right? And you might say, well, that's because there's more white people that support. Well, then why aren't black people supporting black artists? Why aren't black people supporting black businesses? Why aren't black people supporting blacks, period? Right? But if we're just going to be more neutral and we're not even going to go down that rabbit hole, what about the white guy, in my opinion, and many people's opinion, who happens to be just the best freestyle off the top artist in hip hop there is right now? You can't say anything about that. That's not white people supporting that man. No, that's just, that man is neutral. He's talented, and you know who I'm talking about. If you're into hip hop, you know exactly who I'm talking about. And he's that skilled, and he's been doing it since he was young. And he follows the protocols that you're supposed to follow, and he's passionate and he loves it. Can't say anything about that, you know? So the people that like follow cultural appropriation versus cultural appreciation, right? How you gonna tell someone who was born and raised in wherever they are born and raised, and they just, this is how they went about their life, their life, and they chose to do this, and you're gonna say, no, we own that. In general, we own that. No. And I could go into example after example after example of how, like, it just doesn't make any sense, you know? And I think the greater majority of people would also concur with that and be like, yeah, because you're being closed-minded if you're not agreeing with cultural appreciation versus cultural appropriation, you know? So that's really the point. It usually takes me about 10 to 12 minutes to knock out my point on these streams, and today's no different, you know? I have basically done the same today. And I wanted to make sure I got this point across. And like I said, when you see anyone that's coming back later on to check in on this live stream, you'll see the thumbnail is literally what I just broke down. It's a couple of jars of honey with the combs inside. And it's absolutely ridiculous. And I even brought up the extreme examples of like cats and dogs. Who are we? Who are we to judge them? Because we love cats and dogs over here. But meanwhile, we're over here slaughtering lambs and goats and cows and these big animals. Like, shame on you. Seriously, because that's what they've been doing for however long, maybe centuries. And you want to be over here judging them because of your ignorance, So that's really my point there on what I'm seeing with what I wanted to bring up today, topic-wise, which is cultural appropriation versus appreciation. And like I said, I prefaced this whole thing by saying, yeah, it's a touchy topic for sure. It's sure to, it's controversial. It's sure to bring about emotions and sensitivities out of people. But, these are my thoughts. And everyone is welcome to have their own. But like I said, I posed my points and why I think it's very hypocritical of people to think the way they do when they're being closed-minded. And it is what it is, I'm trying to, let me pull over for a second. So, okay, besides actual products, besides actual products for sale, talk about the actual, what I just mentioned that doesn't involve business and doesn't involve money, doesn't involve profit. And you tell me how you judge on the culture of, like I said, in this case, right? If you're ingesting food that is culturally accepted here, but because it's different somewhere else, why are you judging? Why are you judging something that's different abroad or somewhere else, but you're not judging based on, and chances are, especially here in the West, because this is a cultural melting pot. We literally, like, we pick from like every culture, and then we try and like profit off of it, but then quick to judge if it's something you don't understand. It's like, as soon as it becomes culturally accepted, it's like, great, now how do we make money off of it? But when it's something brand new, like crypto, or like something that's not fully understood, it's like you want to fight it, you want to make fun of it, you want to belittle it, You want to say every negative thing about it until it becomes 50% of the nation, especially in Western countries, that then accept it and say, okay, now it's okay, you know? But you were just fighting it tooth and nails for how long? You know, but I digress. See, the thing about India, right? India is very interesting because the diversity in India is very different than many. Like, if you were to compare India to, let's just say, South America, right? Because in South America, besides Brazil and Guyana, and I know Brazil is huge, but besides Brazil and Guyana, you pretty much have like one language and one religion that is like dominant, you know? So it's kind of like everyone gets along, well, not gets along, but like they're able to kind of like navigate easily amongst one another. And China's another example of how like you have one language and no religion and everyone kind of navigates, besides obviously Canton, right? And like maybe a couple of minority groups. But in India, you have like 25 states and you have like thousands of dialects, and you have a plethora of religions, and you have all these different like groups of people, cultures. It's ridiculous. So what happens in one river somewhere and how it's viewed? And don't get me wrong, pollution, I'm in the Bronx right now, right? I can't stand the pollution out here. Because in the culture over here, people just like, as soon as they come out the bodega and they eat something, the trash can might be right there. And instead of walking right to this trash can where it says don't litter, they might have a sandwich, take out this, you know, what they don't need and toss it right there, instead of just walking across the street or maybe a little further down and tossing it into the trash can, right? So I can't stand that. But it's the culture. When you're and unfortunately the enforcement in certain places, it's different from place to place, right? States in India, it's like pollution is an issue in many places. But in certain places, I use the Bronx, for example, because culturally out here, in most places, the culture is like, it's, you don't even think about it. The trash just comes out your hand and it goes right on the floor, not into the waste basket, into the trash cans. But if you go to Scarsdale, nobody's doing that. Nobody is just throwing their trash on the ground wherever they want. That's not happening. Culturally, it is not accepted. You know, like over here, people don't even really bat an eye. There might be people that think to themselves, but they're so used to it that it's like nobody even cares. But it just, you know, like India, for example, has a bad rep, right? But you also have to think that India is so diverse where people are like, India is such a horrible place to go to, right? Because of whatever is on X or social media or wherever, whatever they're saying about India, right? But where my folks are from originally in India, we look at like what's being said about India, and we're like, that doesn't even exist where we're from. You know, it's not even we don't even have crime. Where my parents are from in India, like, crime doesn't even exist. Like, because it's a cultural thing. You know how they say, like, oh, women are not safe? And it's like they couldn't go out at night or this or that. That's not the case. So, you know, with the rapings and like whatever it is, or the gropings and all that stuff, that's like, culturally, it doesn't even exist. And that's why it's just like, it's different from place to place, you know? But I know I went on a tangent there, but when it comes to I just think the judgment, it's like there's ignorance there, where instead of like opening your mind to at least learn a little bit more, and then delve into like, what are you actually doing yourself to see, like, if you're quick to say something negative, are you actually doing something that like is hypocritical or contradictory, because you're actually kind of doing something that resembles it yourself? Okay, so let me answer your question here, some redhead. So, no, of course, like, that's why I just mentioned, like, it's different from, I'm not saying it's right. I just went into a whole thing out here in the Bronx where I prefaced the whole thing by saying I can't stand it myself, because I wouldn't have. I'm the one that goes into the woods out here and picks up trash that other people throw away. Because I'm seeing that people that might be paid or volunteer for the work are not doing it. I'm the one out here picking trash up because I'm looking at the place like it's beautiful, but you're unnecessarily littering, you know? And I tell you also, whenever, and in this channel too, you'll see me do it, not because I'm trying to get like, you know, sympathizers or analytics or people to like root me on, but when I go to India, I do the same thing. And here's why. Not because I want people to be like, hey, devil, what's up? Not because I want people to be like, you know, that's awesome that you're doing that. But maybe I could bring awareness. Maybe we could all together as a community, through strength in numbers. If I'm over there and I'm in a place where I can't stand pollution and I can't stand littering, and like, let's say years from now, let's just say we build this channel up, right? And then I show that I'm a foreigner, right? I come into India and I start picking up trash, and I like bring people together and bring awareness to the pollution. Now, if there's enough actual support that's saying, yeah, let's do that, that'll probably raise eyebrows from the government and say, wow, the locals are not doing this, but we got a foreigner out here that's bringing a lot of awareness and attention to the pollution. And then as a result, eventually the culture will change, because it's shame on the culture for thinking this is okay. So no, of course it's not okay to be polluting in any culture. Out here in the Bronx, in the West, people should not be okay with just trashing their stuff wherever they want. And it's not okay in India. It's not okay in the river, whatever river you're talking about. I think it's probably one of those holy rivers. You know, none of it is okay. So that's my response to you, you know, probing me on answering your question. But you know, that's just what it comes down to. I think whether we're in India, we're in the Bronx, we're in the UK, wherever we're at, I think we should just be more open-minded. Point blank, period, you know? And that's really the gist of it all, you know? But other than that, you know, I don't think I'm reading what you're saying here, redhead. Like, no one said anything about a better culture. You know, I don't know which is the better culture of where, like, where you got that from. Like, I don't know. I'm from the West, right? My folks are from India, so I don't see American culture as better, and I don't see Indian culture as better. Like, I'm literally both. You know, born and raised, I'm a New York native. So no matter what, I'm an American. I'm a patriot, and it's always going to be that way. I go over there to India, I'm a foreigner. But guess what? I have the equivalent of a dual citizenship. It's the equivalent. So even though I'm a foreigner, I have an overseas uh, citizenship there. So I'm a foreigner, but like, besides politics, I'd be looked at like, you know, that's also my culture. You know, it'll probably take me some time to kind of fit in a little bit more, but I don't think any culture is better either way. You know, yeah, if you're just saying that as far as like in general, uh, that's fine to say. But I don't look at any culture or people as lesser, because it's not a financial thing. It doesn't come down to, in my opinion, it doesn't come down to like, okay, the dollar is the, you know, like almost like a universal monetary system, right? That everyone kind of like goes off of, and then like what, everyone else is lesser as a result? No, I don't look at it that way. If the power of the dollar is strong in other countries, obviously it stretches, but does that make you better? No, of course not. But at the same time, it's like, if you have some sort of influence that unfortunately, for whatever reason, is not getting to the people that count, which is government, and that goes for everywhere, right? They always say vote, right? There's a reason for that, because those are the people that can bring about change. So we as the people have to bring awareness to people in politics to be able to make those changes. Right? It's always that way. I don't eat breakfast, by the way. And I tend to practice a lot of fasting. So I don't go by, I'm kind of trying to get your point, but like I don't go by breakfast, lunch, dinner, or any of that. Right? So as far as nutrition is concerned, I go by something totally different. But you know, I hope, like I said, the gist is, I don't look at the West, I don't look at the East, I don't look at any of that as like, you know, anyone is better. You know, I'm one of those people that is very open-minded, and I could go to a very poor area, or I can go to a very bougie upscale area, and you know, I'm not going to judge either way. You know, I'm not going to look at these people in Larchmont or, you know, Chappaqua and just say, oh, they're snooty and they got their noses up in the air. And I'm not going to go to Hunts Point or Melrose out here in the X and be like, these people are, you know, out here in the slums and they just, you know, they're whatever negative thought you want to say. Neither way. So I'm not going to do it. I just know I could go to either way and I'm not going to judge either way. Okay, well that's your opinion, Redhead. If you're one to judge, and this is why, you know, over here, like when you come into this space, you're welcome and free to have your opinions and say exactly what those opinions are. You won't ever be restricted from, you know, I'm not going to judge you for having your opinion. I'm not going to have a moderator prevent you from having your opinions. If someone wants to come in here and spam their product, they could do that too. But it's totally fine to be able to think the way you think. And that has value. So I think you should be able to think how you want to think. And that's important. You know, but me, I'm just talking about me. We all judge. I can agree on that no matter what, whether it's first impressions, whether it's whatever. But I do think it's important to have a distinction between propagating negativity and then passing something along those lines without doing further research, just by, you know, being ignorant to the total facts revolving around that subject matter, and kind of just like we spoke about. Okay, we're out here, for example, right? Like I said, there's the trash can, right? But you'll see there's trash everywhere. If we were to, you know, pinpoint it, we would see there's trash everywhere. So we spoke about that, right? Yeah. In that case, like I'm looking everywhere. The trash can is right there. And not only is it filled to where you can't even put any more trash in there, like that's showing that the city is not doing their job to make sure that's emptied. Like that didn't happen in one day. Clearly they didn't empty that. But at the same time, the people out here, because there's trash cans like, and it's not like, okay, there's a trash can here and you won't see another one for like miles and miles. No, there's going to be a trash can on like every corner. So in that case, yeah, there's like this judgment that goes on because it's like, you know, but like I think we all should have that from within ourselves to then be better versions of ourselves to make better moves. Like I said, I'm the person that goes into the woods and then I'm going to probably clean after people where they should have been cleaning after themselves, right? I'm at the same time, I'm not going to go around picking up every damn thing that I see everywhere. No, I'm not going to do that neither. But, you know, I do my little part. But that's also why I said, if I can bring this to the awareness of people in politics, maybe they can then feel ashamed that they aren't emptying their trash cans in their respective regions, right? In this case, we brought up earlier, it might be a river that's polluted, and it's like, clean up the river, you know, because you can literally clean up you have the power in government to clean up the river, because maybe it took a foreigner to come in and say, you know what, I got my whole community of people that we built a community together over time, and we're bringing shame because they're not doing it themselves, right? The locals are not doing it. For whatever reason, they're not able to. Okay. if you learn the culture and you think, I mean, it doesn't have to be Pakistan, right? Where are you from, redhead? I mean, I'm assuming if you're truly a redhead, you're probably from like a Scandinavian country originally, like your ancestors. So I could say this, right? Like, let's say I go to Scotland and, I learn everything about Scottish culture, and I say the same thing, right? So let's pick something. Let's pick something that pertains to maybe you, right? If you're a true redhead, and we say, I learned the language, I learned the culture, I learned everything, and they're just a lesser people, right? So then, as a result, do you then say Scottish people are lesser? Is that fair to say? Yeah, of course it makes no sense, immortal. Doesn't matter. I'm just saying, because the red hairs on people is usually a little bit more rare. Just like certain blood types, certain features genetically. But I'm just saying, when it comes to, like, instead of saying India or Pakistan, let's pick a different country, right? So let's say the same thing about Scotland in this case, right? And that's not to pick on any ethnicity, but I'm just hearing India and Pakistan, right? So let's choose Scotland, for example, in this case, because this person, you know, I'm associating, obviously, you could be a black man and have red hair. You could be an Indian man and have red hair. You could be from Iran and have red hair, obviously. But I'm just saying, on average, I would associate more Scottish people to have red hair. So let's use Scotland as an example. Are they lesser people then? No, let's talk about Western culture. What's wrong with Western culture? What is the issue with Western culture? And why cannot Western people from Western culture be a lesser people? Is it financial? Why would you say people from Western culture cannot be a lesser people? I just brought up a whole bunch of examples, right? Of how, because we could look at the education system out here. Yeah, Moto. Like, we could look at how the divorce rates out here. We could look at how people study out here and how people are productive out here in the West. Because like I said, I'm born and raised a native New Yorker, right? And like I said, I'm a patriot at the same time. So I'm just being hypothetical. I would never truly shit on, this culture. But I don't see the difference between someone from Scotland and someone from India or Pakistan. So, yeah, that's exactly. So when I think about genetically, I'm thinking Ireland or Scotland. So in my mind, it's like, let's just say you went back to, part of your ancestry, and you went to Ireland and you studied everything about Ireland, language, culture, people, everything. And then in your head, you're thinking, wow, these are really lesser people. Why wouldn't you be able to do the same thing? I don't see why it couldn't be the same thing. Like, you make that association based on your own experiences anywhere. I don't think that way. This is the way Redhead is bringing up he's posing a question. So, I mean, it could be said about really any group, right? So, I think black is beautiful. I think Asians are beautiful. I think every group you could think of is lovely. But that's just me, you know? But like Redhead said, you know, if you want to judge, you could judge. That's your prerogative. And that's totally fine too. But I just think it would probably serve us better to be more open-minded as opposed to just spreading negativity. Because a lot of the times, you know, if you do know everything about something and then that's you know, an opinion you formulated based off like true experience, guess what? The people from Ireland or Scotland or Pakistan or India, they're probably going to concur. They're probably going to be like, you know what? Redhead is right, because Redhead is speaking actual facts, right? You're like, let's say you actually say this is what someone from Pakistan or like Immortal says, this is what someone from Ireland does, which is like, is not so positive. Guess what? A person from Pakistan or a person from Ireland is going to be like, well, he's definitely making points. Like, that's true about us, you know, in general. Obviously, there are exceptions and outliers, but that's true. So, but that's not usually the case. Unfortunately, you'll have like certain situations where people spread negativity about like a whole group based off of like limited information and experiences, right? I mentioned India, right? And you, like, that's like over here when people say a whole bunch of negative things about the cops, and then all cops get bad reps based on what some bad apples are doing. So now all cops are vilified, right? Is that fair to every person in law enforcement? No, it's not. Because now it's like they're not saying certain, they're not prefacing by saying certain cops. No, they're saying cops. They're saying police are whatever. No, they're not saying certain cops. There's a distinction there. It's the same way people are not saying certain places in India or certain, and that like then rubs people the wrong way off of like an entire group. And that's not right, right? If you're going to judge something based off experiences, you should probably, before you're quick to say something about whatever, you should probably be a little more cautious to prevent a message being propagated against an entire group when you know it's probably just isolated incidences, you know? I understand generalization, but again, you have to be careful about generalizations because there's so many differences. I went into the whole thing about China. I went into the whole thing about South America, right? South America, not including Guyana and Brazil. China, not including Canton and certain minority groups. But when you're making a generalization, you then have people who also don't know any better because they're ignorant to, they're only going off of these generalizations. And you, again, I gave you the examples of cops, right? If you're making a generalization and saying cops are whatever, and it's negative, now that generalization is being propagated because you're saying cops. You're not saying certain cops did whatever, and you're not being specific. So in that generalization, now it's being propagated. So now everyone keeps hearing cops, 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 and they're saying all cops. And can you not understand that? That then is dangerous, because now you are causing a negative whole generalization on an entire group because you're not being specific. And that's not the way to go about. It's the same thing with any group. If you're saying Pakistan and you're saying India, do you know how many different types of Indians there are? Do you know how many languages, religions, ethnic groups, etc., etc., etc. there is in India? And if it's not your burden and it's not your problem, but it's okay for you to generalize, then you're part of the problem. If it's not your problem to just be lazy in that respect, you're part of the problem, you know? And that's just what it comes down to, because that's ignorant in my humble opinion, you know, because you're causing mayhem by doing so. And as far as what you said about, you know, wiping us out and taking everything from us, like, I'm not exactly sure what you would have to, like, you know, be more specific on that. I'm not exactly sure what you're saying there about that. But education is important on anyone prejudging or judging or generalizing. You know, it's an important thing to be able to, if you know something, you should, and before you're quick to say something negative, you should probably be a little bit more open-minded in learning a little bit more before just saying something general that could potentially harm. That's like the people that say, you know, video games is what did whatever, or rap music did whatever, or, you know, and it's like you're generalizing. And now it will have other people who are misinformed jump on the bandwagon and then bring about hatred towards that, because you might be an influential person and you might be influencing people who are ignorant because for whatever reason they look up to you. So if you just quickly say, well, it's not my burden to educate others, but it's okay for you to generalize and say hateful comments, that's not cool. And again, you know, I'm not disagreeing with you on certain points you're making, but at the same time, if you're being general when you should be specific, but you're kind of being specific when in actuality you're still generalizing. Like if you say drill music, right? Again, I'm sure people are not going to question that part of the culture in drill music is violent and negative, right? But that doesn't mean the style of drill is going to be negative, right? Because you might have an artist that adopts the style of drill, but they're not negative and they're not violent, right? So yeah, maybe as a whole, in general, you could say that, but that doesn't apply to everyone, right? It is what it is. It's one of those things. John, I appreciate it, but I'm hands-free, you know, so I'm not actually I'm hands-free, so I'm not actually like, driving where I'm like holding the phone. And at the same time, I'm not doing anything more than just engaging and paying attention to the road. If you want me to pull over, I'll pull over. Or we could tour the Bronx together, If anyone wants to see anything about the Bronx, because I'm in the Bronx right now, Bronx, New York, feel free. I'll let you know a little bit about the Bronx. I'll show you around town. I'm serious, John. I don't know if you're from the Bronx or from New York or from any of these areas, you can, I'm taking requests, I'm taking requests from people. I'll be glad to show you around the BX. Yeah, that's what it's about, Redhead. Like I said, anytime you tune into this channel, and I'm not some goody, a goody two-shoe where it's just like everything has to be happy-go-lucky and positive, where, it's like, no, like my folks are from India. I'm a native New Yorker. You pointed out pollution. And even though where my parents are from originally, we don't have a lot of the negative things you see in the media, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to like mask the fact that pollution is not a real issue, even in the state where my parents are from originally, because it is a problem over there, and I can't stand it. So that's why I said, let's say this channel was to grow over the next few years and I go over there. I'm going to bring it to the awareness of people, It might not be a happy topic that everyone will be happy, seeing, because it'll probably be one of these things where people are like, oh, why is he bringing up this pollution thing again, Because I want the pollution to stop. Because I think the place would be that much more beautiful. Because where my folks are from in India, it's 100% literacy, right? The culture is beautiful. There's no crime. It's completely tropical. Everything is beautiful about this place, and the pollution sucks. So I'm going to do something about it. Because if the locals aren't doing something, and I think the place would be that much more powerful if the pollution was to be squared away, then I'm going to do something about it. So I think it's poignant to stand for something, So I appreciate the conversation as well. And like I said, I won't ever have a mod in here regulating conversations, Like I said, if someone wants to spam the comments with whatever they want to spam, they could do that. I won't ever sell anything here. I won't ever probe anyone to like or comment or subscribe or any of those things. I just want real conversations, and I'll do my best to stick to the script on whatever the topic is for the day, and we'll have like constructive dialogue. And that's what it's about. And shout out to Switzerland. My cousin is from Switzerland. She speaks Swiss German, and it's a beautiful, speaking about beautiful place, right? Switzerland doesn't have an issue with pollution. I've been there before, been to Germany, and it's gorgeous. I think Switzerland and Germany is probably even better than Canada, because I've been to Canada before, because it's gorgeous up there. Switzerland is one of those places. You definitely don't have a pollution issue in Switzerland, that's for sure. At least to my awareness. It's not like I know everything about Switzerland, but from what I saw and what I hear, and what I know, a very nice area, that's for sure. you know. I'm curious to see what Costa Rica is about, you know, because I hear very nice things about Costa Rica as well. You know, they say that's like the tropical Switzerland of, you know, that area, Central America. That would be interesting to find out. And I'm sure I would probably post it here and give an in-depth, you know, analysis regarding it. And I think that's important, you know, because I'm going to keep it real here. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything unnecessarily and hide things. Because you could see, like, from the posts that are here, I don't just point out positive things all the time just because I like to stay positive. When things are negative and things are like not so great, I point out the good, the bad, and the ugly. So that's just what it is, you know. But like I said, I am taking requests. If anyone wants to see what's happening out here in the Bronx, let me know. You know what you would like to see. There's probably only another like hour or so before the sun comes up. I'm by the Bronx Zoo, the Bronx Botanical Gardens, Fordham University in the Bronx. So that's where I'm at right now. All lovely places. You know, we're very close to Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's, just like that. You know, like it's crazy. You know, that time flies when you're having fun. You know, even when it's difficult, do our best to have fun regardless. And that's just what it comes down to. Here's my liquor bottle. You know, you tell me not to, you know, drive and chat, but I'm gonna drink and drive a little bit more. Be good. And I'm just kidding. Definitely not liquor. You know, it's definitely water. Definitely spring water too. It's not even purified water. It's spring water. And speaking of breakfast, you know, I guess this would be around the time of what breakfast would be. I think I might have something to eat. Very unconventional too. I'm not just gonna go to a diner and have like I don't know, hash browns and bacon and pancakes and, you know, whatever it is. It's typically a breakfast meal. I'm gonna have like chestnuts, probably some sort of like I don't think along the lines of whatever is typical breakfast. I think along the lines of like macros. You know, I'm thinking, okay, I need a certain amount of protein, a certain amount of carbs, good fiber, omega 3 to 6 ratio, and make sure my mono and poly unsaturated fats are a certain way. That's how I think, you know. So, and I usually don't wait till I get hungry or thirsty. So I just think to myself, okay, you know what? This is a good time for me to eat. So let me go eat. You know what? I'll give you a perfect example, right? So I'm going to make a left here, and then I'm going to say to myself, this is a good time for me to try and, let me see. This is a good time for me to try and, because I was the other day, right? I was like, I'm trying to do 100 push-ups, right? But I was so sore. So that didn't work out too well. So then I was like, okay, I knocked out 60 because my body was sore, right? So I'm still doing my exercises. I still did, I'm doing 100 air squats per day. I'm doing 250 calf raises, and I'm doing about 100 push-ups a day. You know, so I'm still doing that, and I started going to the gym, so that's good. And as far as pull-ups, I try and do my little numbers, you know. So let's see. I'm making a whole bunch of turns here, but oh no, there's a cop right there. Not a good move. And the cop is like, "What are you doing, my guy?" Okay, I'm gonna try and make this quick. All right, ready? Usman. I guess cow meat is good, right? Let's see. Okay. So the other day I said I got these heavy things on. Let's see. Okay. Let's see what we can do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 20. Can we get more? Let's see. 21. 22. Yeah, that's a good number. That's a good number. And like I said, I've been going to the gym as of late. So that is great also. And today, when I get into the gym later on, I'm going to do arms. So I'm going to do triceps and biceps. So that's going to be awesome. That's what I'm missing. 22 pull-ups with all this heavy stuff on. Not bad. I think, and the form was pretty decent. So I think with push-ups, I should be able to get 100 straight, or at least closer to 100 straight, rather easily. Air squats, I should be able to do, yeah, like same thing, like 100 straight. And for pull-ups, I should do like closer to 30 straight. Those are good numbers. Otherwise, what I notice is if you're constantly doing calisthenics, as long as you're eating right and you're sleeping right and you're staying hydrated correctly, then you don't have to work as hard in the gym when you're doing resistance. And you get like really quick results. Like I'm not 18 years old. I'm actually around 50. So when I'm getting hella results, I'm not taking TRT. I'm not even taking protein powder. I don't take creatine. I don't take anything. So I'm pretty ripped. I have a 10-pack, obliques, serratus. I get quick results, you know, and it's not just the genetic thing. I just practice the right habits. And like I said, you eat right, you sleep right, you hydrate properly, get a little good, you know, good sun, practice the right habits. And I think foundationally speaking, if you get your calisthenics on point, and you don't have to work as hard in the gym doing resistance. And that's what because I love doing both. I'm not from the camp of it's either resistance or calisthenics or cardio or this or that. No, it's like hybridize it and blend it all together, you know? And I find that I can just do a little 12 sets in the gym per body part. And, you know, you have to kind of like restrict yourself. You have to kind of like prevent yourself from overdoing things, which is a beautiful thing, you know, because like if you're someone that goes to the gym regularly, it's easy to do like, you know, 6 different exercises, 7 different exercises, 8 different exercises, and doing like 4 sets per exercise, right? So if you're doing 4 or 5 sets per exercise and you have 8 different exercises, you know, that's like 30, 40 sets, right? As opposed to, okay, if you just pick 3 or 4 moves and you only do 3 sets, and you're so used to doing, like wanting to do 6 or 7 moves and 4 or 5 sets, and now you have to actually bring it down to like only 3 or 4 moves and only do 3 sets. That's a major, like, you know, and that's beautiful because now you can knock out time in the gym to like 20 something minutes, and that's incredible. And I'm finding I'm getting crazy results. Like, as a friend of mine said, she said, I'm looking sturdy, right? And I'm only gonna continue to look more sturdy because I'm doing all the right things. So I think calisthenics, definitely the foundation, besides everything else I just mentioned with the proper habits. And I even put this on a live stream a few days ago about the value of getting proper D3 synthesis from the sun. And to me, that's like anywhere between 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. and I would say 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., depending on which month. And then you get like anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes, well, upwards of almost 20 something minutes, twice a day. And if you do that for like maybe 10, 15 days straight, you can store up to 3 months worth of D3 synthesized D3 from the sun throughout your body, your fat, your liver, etc. So in places like where I'm at in New York, we're talking about the entire winter. You could get upwards of 4 months worth. We're talking about like 15 weeks worth of sun. So you don't even have to supplement with D3 pills because you literally got it from the sun over like a 2 or 3 week period of time where the UV rays are not that strong, where it's damaging to your skin. And you're good for the whole winter. People don't even know that. And it's such a powerhouse, hormonally speaking. So now you're good. And like I said, you do your calisthenics, which is like the foundation alongside sleep, 7 to 9 hours, right? Hydration, which on average, in general, depending, anywhere from like, I would say 50 to 100 fluid ounces. And make sure you get your macros right, right? That's a very individual thing. And you're amazing, you know? And like I said, I'm almost 50, and the results I'm getting, again, no TRT, no protein powder, no creatine, and I'm getting crazy results just by practicing these things. And then I do very little in the gym, resistance-wise. So, yeah, I'm just passing that along. Today's topic, if, you know, anyone's checking in just now, if you go back, you'll see it was about cultural appropriation versus cultural appreciation, right? Cultural appropriation versus appreciation. That's what the topic was about. We had a great, you know, conversation about this today. I rather enjoyed it, had a great time talking about it. It was very real. I knew it would be. And if there were people that came in, first off, I just want to say, I appreciate every person that does check in. You know, I sincerely mean that, because that's what it's all about. But I definitely enjoyed the conversation. It was awesome. We had a real conversation. I knew it was going to be that way if people actually wanted to chime in, which some people did, which was awesome. We had a real conversation about it, you know, and that's what it's all about. And I hope to have these types of conversations moving forward way more, you know, and some of these topics are going to be these types of topics where it's difficult to talk about, and a lot of people don't want to have these types of conversations, you know, because they are touchy topics, and it draws on certain, you know, emotional triggers. So it's a beautiful thing regardless, and I'm glad to have tough talks with people that are willing to share their opinions. So keep doing so, folks. And I hope we foster a community together that is going to be a very powerful one. And I brought up in this live stream earlier about how if I was to go to another country, and as a foreigner, if I have a strong community with me, we could take it to the highest level together. We could literally shut it down in the best possible way. Like, we could literally, through the power of community, we could literally shame them